If you're hearing the douchiest music of all time, you know you're listening to Hot Sauce Sports. Douche number one, I am Peeze Del Rees. I am joined, of course, by my typical co-host, the douche number two.
Yeah.
The deuce, Terry Tam.
I'm just happy we don't have to hear. Actually, our guest is on our intro. He's on
He
our
is,
normal
actually.
intro.
Yeah, his voice has been used. I don't even know if he knows that.
I don't think he knows.
It's Carlan Gay. How's it going, Carlan?
I noticed it, and I haven't been paid for it, so we might have to have a conversation off air about using my likeness. That happens in the NCAA all the time. I am now a pro journalist. I'm no longer an amateur journalist. You just can't use my rights like that. What is it, the NCAA?
Yes, actually.
Yes, exactly
it's
what
when
it
we model ourselves after the free labor that the NCAA uses. We're going with a little bit of a different format, of course. This week we've already come out with the weekly podcast. We've done with the news and notes from the week, but we wanted to sit down and talk to Carlan Gay of NBA.com and of NBA Soundsystem. We want to talk about the tournament, the NBA. It's a great time in basketball. In basketball, we definitely want to save Carlan for the NBA playoffs. Hopefully, he'll come back after today, join us during the playoffs. But
the check's on the way, Carlan. Don't worry about
it.
Thank you. It must be so big that you're still writing zeros on it. That's why you haven't sent it yet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's a lot of zeros. No other numbers on there.
I just figured you're the kind of guy who likes those big Happy Gilmore style checks. You know,
I'll take it. I'll take the photo op with it. I need a new Twitter profile picture, so send it along.
There you go. Done. See, we've contributed to you, so
exactly.
You owe us money now.
Basically, you owe us now. Carlan, have you been enjoying the tournament so far? Sorry, have you been enjoying the tournament so far?
Yeah, I mean, the tournament's been great. You're talking about, anytime you get a single elimination tournament, no matter the sport, and then you throw in the fact that these are kids. I remember Paul Jones. Paul Jones is the play-by-play voice of the Raptors on the radio. And we were talking about college ball, and he's like, do you know why, people love college ball so much? And I was like, why? It's because you can have a 20-point lead, and it can evaporate because kids always F up. And that's the truth. That's why people love college sports, because anything can happen at any time. Because at the end of the day, we treat these guys like, we joked about, the amateur athlete and all that stuff at the beginning, but realistically, most of these guys are going to be playing pro. They get treated like pros in some of their college towns, and it's such a high level of basketball. And then on top of the fact that there's so much high stakes, there's so much, every win, coach is getting a bonus, or that could mean a new facility for the next upcoming draft class or college class, recruiting class, and so much is on the line for all of these schools. It really is one of the best tournaments in all of sports. I love the playoffs in any sport, but when you add in the single elimination game factor, I think that takes it over the line.
I think that that's the attraction, right? Is that anything could happen at any time, and we're putting so much into an 18-year-old's, a 19-year-old's skill with the ball to beat a buzzer, to shoot the ball right before the end of the buzzer. What's been your biggest, let's say, upset or Cinderella story that you've been following?
I think Duke should have lost to VCU. I mean, I know it wasn't an upset, but that was, to me, probably the most fun I've had watching a basketball game, at least in the last 5 years. I can't remember a game off the top of my head where I had, that much enjoyment because I didn't know what was going to happen. You have Duke, the powerhouse. A lot of people are picking them to go all the way to the finals and win the championship. You have Zion Williamson, who is, bar none, the most, electrifying player outside of LeBron James, in probably in our lifetime, in terms of a guy that's not playing in the NBA. The buzz that he's created has been insane, and he's lived up to the hype. RJ Barrett, is potentially going to be the best Canadian to ever walk on a basketball court. What Drake has done for hip hop in Canada, RJ Barrett is expected to do the same for basketball in Canada. And
what about Rick
no
Fox?
Hyperbole.
Yeah,
I mean, Rick Fox did his thing, and then he went Hollywood on this, so he kind of forgets this a little bit. Big Bill Weddington is also Canadian, and he's big time. But it's all going to come down to Rick Fox is probably more Cardinal Official than RJ Barrett, than Drake, right? There was a pioneer, but RJ is a guy he's a generational talent, and then you had Tyus Jones, and you throw in Cam. His name is escaping me now, but he was the number 3 player in the nation. And then obviously Coach K, one of the greatest coaches of all time. And for them to, flame out potentially in the round of 32 would have been insane to a team like VCU that, I mean, they're not a major, college team, but that would have put them on the map. That would have created history. It would have changed the game for that entire school with Johnny Dawkins. So That to me was the most memorable. The fact that 9 times out of 10, that final tip in at the buzzer probably goes down, but the basketball gods just didn't want it to happen that night, and continues to move on.
During the tournament, Carlan, we start to learn some familiar names that a lot of the fans that haven't been watching the NCAA regular season haven't known yet. Ja Morant is the guy who first comes to mind. Is there anyone else you think is poised to make a name for themselves for the rest of the tournament who's not yet a household name?
I like DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia. He's a guy who I've told multiple people is Kawhi 2.0 for me. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC. I think he's a little bit more polished offensively than Kawhi Leonard was when he came out of San Diego State University way back when. And I stood next to him. The guy's long. I'm 6'1". He's all of 6'7" with length. He already has an NBA body. And last year he would have came out and been an NBA player at this time, but he got hurt right before the ACC tournament and was out for the entire season. And that's why Virginia, in my opinion, lost that heartbreaker, as a 1 seed to the 16 seed, the first time that's ever happened. Now they have the full team, and they have, more importantly, DeAndre Hunter, who's I think he's going to be a steal of the draft. Not getting a ton of buzz right now. Everybody's talking about RJ. Everybody's talking about Ja Morant. Everybody's talking about Zion. But the team that ends up with with DeAndre Hunter is going to end up with not only a great pro, but I have potential to be an all-star. He really, to me, is Kawhi Leonard 2.0.
Carlan,
Big shoes.
We've been talking the tournament. I want to switch gears for a quick second to the NBA. Chris Bosh retired. You, of course, write or the editor for NBA.com from the Canadian side. Chris Bosh has somewhat of a polarizing impact in Canada. I've seen a lot of shade thrown at Chris Bosh and having his jersey retired in Miami. To Terry and I, we were just super happy to see it. To me, he's one of the best defensive fours I've ever seen, and just generally a great player all around. His career was cut short. What are your thoughts about him, and how do you think his career will be remembered?
Well, first of all, on the Miami Heat side, the version of Chris Bosh that ended up winning 2 championships with the Heat and was really a part of that run that they had for those 4 years. We're talking about a guy who sacrificed being the star of the team to be the third man, and not only just be the third man, but he was like the door stump of that team. He took a lot of the vitriol when that team wasn't playing well. Everything landed on his shoulders, and he had to live with that. Dwayne Wade at that point in his career had already won a championship, so he was kind of set in stone in the way he was perceived by media. LeBron James was LeBron James, so no one was going to blame him for anything that happened wrong. Everything kind of fell on Chris Bosh's lap, and he took that in stride and elevated his game each and every single year. They asked him to defend. Well, you mentioned being one of the best 4 defenders. He wasn't the defender when he got there. He had to make himself a defender. They asked him to shoot the 3 to clear the lane for LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, who 2 of the greatest slashers of NBA history. He had to turn himself into a 3-point shooter to do that. So to credit to Chris Bosh, they don't win 1 championship, let alone 2, if Chris Bosh is not there. He had to guard, a lot of bigs at the time, and then he also had to guard a lot of smalls out of position. I think Chris Bosh was, probably the best thing to happen. He was the glue of that Miami Heat franchise. You talk about every dynasty that there ever was. There's always been a glue guy. Robert Horry, he's been on multiple of those. And you look back at the Jordan years, Tony Kukoc had those years. And then even before that was Dennis Rodman, Horace Grant. Chris Bosh was in that mold. And on top of it, he was an all-star. Then flipping over to the Toronto side, obviously growing up in Canada, I watched Chris Bosh for, kind of come onto the scene. Here's a guy who's a number 4 overall pick in a very, very stacked draft. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, the list goes on. And Chris Bosh still was able to stand above all of them and stand shoulder to shoulder with those guys. He was an all-star when he was in Toronto, 20-10. That's not something to season at. And this is a time, where guys weren't scoring as much. The league, you look at the stats page nowadays, guys are getting 20 and 10 because the game is so fast. Back then, Chris Bosh getting 20 and 10, he was probably one of maybe 2 or 3 players in the league doing that at a high level in Toronto, in a city that wasn't known at the time for their basketball prowess. Got them to the playoffs, was a leader of that team. Unfortunately couldn't get past the first round, but the fact that he was able to, be the go-to guy and on a playoff team, you have to give him credit where credit's due. And I'll say this: he, had his jersey retired in Miami. I truly believe that in Toronto they should honor him. I don't know if they should flat out retire the jersey, but they should do something, whether it's a statue or something, to honor Chris Bosh, because after Vince Carter, Chris Bosh and DeMar DeRozan, those three guys is really what this franchise is built on. Everybody remembers how great Vince was because he was the first. Chris Bosh had to elevate from Vince Carter, and that's tough to do when you're the second, player behind a legend.
You've answered all my questions.
Nice.
I was going to talk about the transition that Toronto went from Vince Carter to Chris Bosh to now we see the powerhouse that they are in the East. I was going to talk about his effect and if they were going to retire his number in Toronto. So yeah, I do think that they should honor him in some way for sure in Toronto. The effect that he had, and he brought them to the playoffs almost single-handedly. There wasn't really anybody else on that team back then to push him in the playoffs. So imagine him in his prime on a roster like they have now. It would be a completely different story. I think everybody hated on Chris Bosh because he was just a bit weird. He was just a weird guy. Yeah. He wasn't, that's why he wasn't.
Still is.
Yeah, exactly. He still is. Yeah, he's not a very cookie cutter kind of guy. So that's why we all kind of liked him or ripped on him a bit.
I really like him for that. He's
one
of the few genuine athletes who will say whatever.
So fucking weird though.
Yeah,
so fucking.
And he looked like a Raptor. He looked like what we think a Raptor looks like, right?
So the season's almost over. We have a few games out for the NBA. Who do you think's your MVP? Is it everybody's saying Gianni or Harden?
First of all, I want to say this, even though, my bosses might kill me for this, as an NBA.com editor, I cannot wait for the season to be over. I mean, who's really watching some of these games? Some of these games are awful. I can't wait for it. Like, I would rather read, I don't know, name any book that is boring you to death that you would have read in high school top to bottom twice before watching some of these awful games they have on the back end of the schedule. I mean, I don't know who I need to talk to at the office, but the scheduling back end of the season has been rough. If you're a better NBA fan than I am if you're watching some of these games, because I tell you, I'm not.
It's tough. I have been. It's honestly the end of the NBA season is such a drag because you know how good the playoffs are, and you're watching some of the players themselves don't want to be there. Like, it's just awful across the board. I heard something by Stan Van Gundy last week. Carlan Gay joining us from NBA Soundsystem and NBA.com, NBA.com Canada. Carlan, he said that this year the Warriors actually look to be more vulnerable than they have in past years, and compared it to the year that the Pistons upset the Lakers in the finals, and saying that there hasn't been a team ever that's been in the bottom half in defense during the regular season who has gone on to win a championship. Your thoughts are Stan Van Gundy is a crazy person, and thank God the Pistons got rid of him, or Stan Van Gundy's a genius?
First of all, I think he's a crazy person, but I actually agree with him.
All right, there could be two things.
And this is more so about feel than hard cold facts. Like Van Gundy wanted to give you all his research. I'm just going to give you my opinion. I picked the Houston Rockets at the beginning of the season to upset the Golden State Warriors in the conference finals and get to the finals like they were supposed to last year. And the reason why, it's not because I don't think Golden State's good. It's not because I don't think they're elite and probably one of the best assembled teams that we'll see in the next 5-10 years. It's because everything has gone right through this run for the Golden State Warriors. The last 4 years has been very favorable to them. I know they didn't win the championship every single time, but you have to look at what's happened along the line. The first time they got to the finals against the Cavaliers, Kevin Love's not playing, and then Kyrie Irving gets hurt in the first round. There was no chance the Cavaliers were going to beat them. And then when those two injuries happened, it took them 6 games to get it done because Steph Curry couldn't get it going, and they had to bring Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup and change everything else up. The year after, they win 73 times, and then, if Draymond Green doesn't get suspended, they probably win that series. But you look at the year following the year, Kevin Durant decides to change the game and join them in Golden State. He had an incredible series, probably looked like the best player in the league at that time, even with LeBron James on the court. This year, Kyrie Irving, or the following year after that, Kyrie Irving decides he doesn't want to play with LeBron James anymore. How lucky is that? Now LeBron James is playing by himself. Kevin Love's still hurt. They finally get to the finals, almost lose game 1. And if J.R. Smith doesn't have a brain fart, they're down 1-0 with a super team that had no business being there. And then before that, Chris Paul doesn't rip his hamstring off the bones. They wouldn't have been in the finals. The Rockets were up 3-2 at that point and looked as though they were going to clean them out. everything has happened for a reason. And even beyond that, Steph Curry's gotten hurt in the last 2 playoffs, and they haven't needed him for the first 2 rounds, so they've been able to cruise through. Things have happened so that they got through every single time. I don't think it's a matter of whether or not they're still enough. Obviously, they are. 2-time MVP and Steph Curry, and they got Kevin Durant on the team. They're really, really good. They're an ankle twist away from being regular, though. They're Steph Curry injury away from being regular, and the rest of the league has now caught up, and they're also not afraid of the juggernaut that these guys are. So I really think Houston will take them out in the finals, and it's not because of skill or will or anything else. I just think the good luck is going to run out eventually, and it's going to be the year. This year is going to be the year.
I really hope, because I'm tired of seeing them in the finals.
Well, you heard it here first. Carlan Gay says that the Warriors are trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Carlan Gay, you mentioned that your parent company is DAZN. Terry,
yes.
Terry, myself, Eagle, all of us are on another podcast. Carlan Gay, sorry about that. Sorry about the mispronunciation. The 3 of us are actually on a podcast, another podcast that is sponsored by DAZN. We're big fans. We all use it. But a couple of questions. One, how is MLB's opening day not on DAZN when you guys are partners? And secondly, when are we getting the NBA on DAZN?
Well, it was on DAZN in the States. I don't know what it was on in wherever you guys are in Canada.
For real?
Canada.
Oh, no, we don't get it. I guess we don't
Yeah,
have it.
well, in the States, I think the DAZN platform we had Adnan Virk, great Canadian, on the
He's awesome.
on the debut episode,
I blame the Raptors.
it's probably the Raptors' fault, or Bell or Rogers, one of those 2
More
guys.
likely Rodgers.
Fuck 'em.
Just trying to hold you guys back, realistically. But I think that deal is only so it's like a red zone channel if you're familiar with the football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
So you cut in and go out to other games. No one wants to see the 9th man in the lineup. Like today, if you're watching the Yankee game, no one wants to see Tulowitzki play or swing a bat. They'd rather see Harper at bat. So that's kind of how the show was kind of structured. But it was definitely on in the States. I will find out for you. The next time we talk in the playoffs about the NBA, I will find out for you why it's not on in Canada and who we need to blame for that.
I was looking forward to that. I heard that John Skipper had worked out a deal with the MLB that there would be sort of exactly that, like a red zone kind of thing, 30-minute show dealing with all of the like a recap.
Oh, longer
of all
than 30
the games.
minutes. It's all
It's
games.
all day? Oh, that's awesome.
All from the opening pitch to the last pitch at night, you're going to get all the whip around no matter what.
And NBA coming to DAZN anytime soon?
Fingers crossed. That's rumors.
That's a big one, right?
Are rumors. I don't want to put nothing out there, but I'm rooting for it.
Yes, that would be huge.
It would be huge for for a lot of people. I think it opens up the doors for more coverage in multiple countries, not just Canada. But fingers crossed on that one. But I'll find out about what's happening on the baseball level.
It'll be tough, I think. I mean, there's so many broadcasters out there that have so much money invested in the NBA, and
yes.
we'll see. TNT has a lot of money invested in there.
On yesterday's show, Terry and I listed some hot takes about the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And Carlan, we want to know what you think. What percentage you think these have of coming true? We did these on purpose so that Eagle can get them up and make us look bad when we're wrong next week. So that's the theme behind them, because we don't mind looking like jackasses. So I'll list them to you, and then you tell us what percentage you give it to be right. So the first one I had was Virginia lose after scoring only 46 points in the Elite Eight.
After scoring 40 points or
46 points. 46.
I gave it a 27%.
All right, not bad. I'll take those odds.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Virginia. I like Virginia. They can get it done.
I'm a fan of Virginia too. So I'm gonna go. Duke loses to Virginia Tech. Zion goes under 15 points in that game.
That's a 15% chance, but I give the next game, regardless of who they play, a 100% chance that Duke's going home. They're not making it past this weekend. They're not making it to the Final Four.
Hey, I said, look at that. That's another one of my predictions there. Carlan, you and I?
Yeah.
I got
that money you guys are sending me for my voiceover is going on that Duke game after this Virginia Tech game. I don't think Virginia Tech can get it done, but I think whoever comes out, they're just going to get out. Coach K has been horrible in terms of his coaching adjustments. I think he's getting old and losing his fastball. But they have too much talent to be in some of the games that they've been in, and it's going to run out now.
Yeah.
MJ Walker has a monster second half, and Gonzaga fall to FSU.
Yeah, Gonzaga's not losing. Gonzaga's going all the way to the finals.
Okay.
All the way to
So I give
finals.
that they're going to the finals. I give that a 3.6% chance.
Woo.
So I'm going to skip my second one because that just answers that. And then I'm going to go Auburn and NC go to quadruple overtime. Auburn winning. on a buzzer beater.
On a buzzer beater, Auburn wins. So I give that 25%.
25%.
The triple overtime, I don't believe in, so stay at 25%.
What about
but the buzzer
quadruple?
beater?
What about quadruple
we
overtime,
haven't-
though?
Well, yeah, the quadruple overtime, I give that 0%. But the buzzer beater has a good shot of happening, so I'm gonna bump that up to 45%. How about that?
All right.
I like it.
All right, I got one last one. Houston has no chance because all season long, under 40% from three, they're going to miss 5 3-pointers in a row and lose the game.
Too specific.
Yeah. Well, again, they look like idiots, right?
You're talking about the Rockets.
No, I'm talking about Houston
the
Cougars. Yeah.
Cougars. I'd have to
To
agree
take
with
on
you on
Kentucky.
that. Yeah, 100% chance of happening.
100%, yes!
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Go with it.
I like it, Carla.
Terry, you got another one?
Yeah, I'll give you one more. How about Oregon being the lowest seed to make it to the Final Four?
No chance. Give
no
give
chance.
that 0.1%, because I never want to say there's never a chance. So 0.1%.
Well, there's that point one. There's that point
Taking
one.
the high road,
Yeah.
like
Uh,
Volkan.
Yeah.
Carlan, you said, first of all, you said Duke has no chance. You said Coach Krzyzewski's washed. But given that Coach K is done, given that Duke's pretty much done, who's winning the NCAA championship coming to us at the beginning of April?
I think Gonzaga gets to the finals. I think I might have to roll with them, to be quite honest with you. I think they're going to be playing Michigan State at the end of the day. There's something special with that team. Every time they lose a player or someone gets hurt, it seems like they rally around each other and kind of elevate their game. There's always a next man up mentality, and that's what you like to see in championship teams. They have a lot of, when one shining moment's playing at the end of the year, I think you're going to see, or at the end of tournament, you're going to see a lot of, Michigan State stuff just by, virtue of the story they've had. And Tom Izzo hasn't won one in a little bit. And, I think he needs one. And Gonzaga is another team that, Mark Few has done a great job of getting them to, the brink, but hasn't been able to finally cross that line. I think this is a year that he does it. He has a lot of upperclassmen on the team. Brandon Clark, a fellow Canadian who's there, and I expect him to be drafted in the lottery. I really think that Gonzaga has what it takes. The only other team that scares me that might knock off Gonzaga is UNC.
Okay.
UNC, a lot of. I watched them here. I was in Charlotte for the ACC tournament, and watched a couple of their games, and they are really, really, really good. Their style of play, they can play fast, they can play slow, and they have a lot of seniors on the team, and guys that aren't going to be afraid of the moment. And I think Roy is one of the best coaches in the country, so that's the only team that does scare me. But Gonzaga is my pick to win it all.
Well, that was Carlan Gay joining us from NBA.com and NBA Soundsystem. Carlan, you've been great. Thanks a ton. I think all of the entire state of North Carolina is ready to riot on your behalf. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Eagle. This has been a special edition of Hot Sauce Sports.